Attacking midfield is the position that most of the game's greatest ever players have called home. Alfredo Di Stefano, Pelé, Johan Cruyff, Michel Platini, Zico, Diego Maradona, and the late great Bobby Charlton all played in attacking midfield while being the stars of their teams and generations, and there is a very good reason for that. Attacking midfield has historically been the position where the most talented players plied their trade because it gave them the most freedom to go and express themselves and the most time on the ball in areas where they were best able to exert influence upon games. The 21st century has, in some ways though, seen the death of the traditional number 10. You don't get many players like Enzo Francescoli, Gheorghi Hagi, or JJ Okocha in the modern game, and on the rare occasions that you still do, their more elusive and enigmatic qualities tend to be coached out of them, and they are frequently pushed out wide, in favour of safer and more functional players in the middle of the park. How many recognised classic number 10s can you think of at Europe's biggest clubs? Liverpool haven't had one since Coutinho, Real Madrid not since James Rodriguez, or perhaps Isco, and PSG not since even further back than that. So how do the 21st century's number 10 stack up against the likes of Platini, Zico, and Maradona? Well, in today's video, we're going to find out, as we continue our countdown of the 7 greatest footballers in every position since 2000. If you haven't already, I would of course arrogantly recommend the rest of the videos in this series, and if there is anyone that you expect to feature in this 7 that doesn't, and isn't mentioned in the honourable mentions, it's probably because they were considered for a previous 7, or will be for a future one. Frank Lampard, for example, though very offensive, played more games in central than attacking midfield, so he featured in the previous 7. Meanwhile, Pavel Nedved played more games on the left flank than anywhere else, so will be considered for that one. And Francesco Totti, though a second striker in all truth, will be considered alongside centre forwards rather than attacking midfielders. As always, the quality and quantity of a player's performances since 2000 is the sole criteria, not a player's peak, the trophies they won, or longevity alone. So Rivaldo and Rui Costa, who were both excellent at the beginning of the 2000s, miss out by virtue of not having enough high-quality performances within the relevant time period, as do youngsters like Jude Bellingham and Jamal Musiala at this stage. Meanwhile, Kevin Nolan played loads of games, but missed out due to a lack of quality compared to the competition. I'm sorry, Kevin. Without further ado then, here are, indisputably, the 7 greatest attacking midfielders since 2000, along with a handful of honourable mentions. 7th, Juan Román Riquelme. I said these are indisputably the 7 greatest attacking midfielders since 2000 in jest there, what am I like? Because this is such a debatable list that perhaps no 2 people in the world could ever agree upon the exact same 7, and that is illustrated by the man in 7th. To some, Juan Román Riquelme should be in the top 3 of this 7, based upon his sheer ability and status as perhaps the greatest old-school number 10 since 2000. Meanwhile, to others, Riquelme's repeated fallouts and lack of success and trophies, both in Europe and on the international stage, ought to prevent him from even coming close to featuring. Amidst those 2 extremes, regrettably I suppose, I am a Juan Román Riquelme centrist. I think Riquelme probably is among the 3 most talented players in this 7, and among the most gifted in any position over the last 30 years, and although Riquelme only spent 4.5 years playing in Europe, which, inevitably, lowers his stock in the eyes of many Europeans, it's all too often forgotten just how good he was for 3 of those years. Riquelme is the quintessential example of a classical 10 that we don't really see in the modern game, and even in the early to mid-2000s, he seemed like a player from a bygone era. I often compare Riquelme to Diego Maradona, but without the speed and explosivity, and I don't think that that is being hyperbolic. Riquelme's vision, awareness, touch, technique, dribbling, and weight of pass were all inspired, and he is perhaps the only player who ever dog-walked Claude Makélélé around a football pitch and made him look like a Sunday League clogger. Riquelme transformed Villarreal from bottom-half stragglers into Champions League semi-finalists, and between 2003 and 2005, he was arguably the best midfielder in Europe. That is despite the fact that Riquelme probably played his best football with Boca Juniors either side of his brief stint in Spain, and it is only his short-lived stay in Europe and lack of success or longevity in Europe and on the international stage that prevents Riquelme from featuring higher, but I couldn't bring myself to leave him out entirely. 6th, David Silva. In direct contrast to Riquelme, David Silva perhaps lacked some of the star power of some of the other players in this 7, and he was arguably never his club or country's main man, but his consistency, longevity, and level of success are virtually without peer. Unlike Riquelme, who is 8 years his senior, Silva also has the added advantage of every one of his more than 900 senior career appearances having come post-2000. A graduate of the Valencia Academy who spent just 4 years in Los Che's first team before being snapped up by Manchester City, Silva went on to spend a decade at the Etihad. When he arrived in 2010, Man City hadn't won a trophy in 34 years, and they hadn't been crowned as champions of England in 42. When he departed in 2020, they had won 13 trophies, including 4 Premier League titles, becoming the dominant force in the English game. That wasn't solely down to Silva, of course. A certain Gulf state had a fair bit to do with it, but you could make a compelling case for Silva being Manchester City's greatest player of all time, and he is certainly among their top 5. At international level, Silva won the Euros twice and the 2010 World Cup with Spain, racking up 125 caps in total in one of the most competitive midfields ever assembled, and his 35 goals puts him 4th in Spain's all-time scoring charts. Silva was a technical marvel, a tireless runner, and exceptionally intelligent. He could perform any midfield or attacking role with aplomb, and as a number 10, where he played most of his football, he is just about the most complete that the Premier League has ever seen. 5th, Mesut Ozil. If Mesut Ozil hadn't peaked at about the age of 23, there is every chance that he would have topped this 7, or certainly have made the podium places. Ruud Gullit described Ozil as being technically perfect, while Jose Mourinho once said, quote, "Ozil is unique. There is no copy of him, not even a bad copy." End quote. Ozil, like Riquelme, felt like a bit of a throwback, and it speaks to his phenomenal ability at his peak that, despite never really being a Jose Mourinho player, just look at how he dealt with Juan Mata, Ozil barely missed a game during his 3 years at Real Madrid. Ozil racked up 157 appearances across those 3 seasons, during which time he made 81 assists and scored 27 goals. The season before he joined Real Madrid, Ozil made 29 assists and scored 10 goals for Schalke. His nickname, the Assist King, was richly deserved then, and he was probably the best advanced playmaker, at his peak, that we have seen this century. Even at Arsenal, where Ozil was not without his critics, he still topped the Premier League's assist charts in the 2015-16 season, having made 19 assists in only 35 games. Unfortunately, things soured for Ozil at Arsenal in his last couple of years, and he failed to revive his career in Turkey with either Fenerbahce or Istanbul Başakşehir. Ozil basically departed centre stage in terms of being a star performer at the highest level at the age of only 29, but it's often forgotten that he broke through and enjoyed enormous success quite early on. Ozil, therefore, still managed to make 605 appearances before hanging up his boots 8 months ago, all of them post-2000 of course, so all things considered, I think 5th seems appropriate. 4th, Thomas Muller. There are 2 points to address first and foremost in regard to Thomas Muller, namely that he isn't an attacking midfielder, and he is much worse at football than everyone else in this 7, yet I've ranked him as the 4th best attacking midfielder of the 21st century. On the first point, Muller has played everywhere in a forward line over the years, and has even pioneered his own position, Raumdeuter, literally, space interpreter in English. I'm not making a video on the 7 best Raumdeuters though, but if I were, you can be assured that he would be top, so attacking midfield is the next best thing. On the second point, I suppose it depends upon what exactly we mean when we say good or bad at football. Sure, Muller is the least technically gifted player in this 7, and probably by some distance, but there is more to football than beating a man or dribbling the entire length of the pitch. Muller is among the most intelligent footballers of the modern era, he is a tremendous professional, and his composure in the final third is inspired. In terms of pure numbers, no one in this 7 can live with him. Muller has already made 680 appearances for Bayern Munich, the second most in the history of the club, during which time he has scored 279 goals and made 266 assists, putting him third in the club's all-time scoring charts and first in terms of assists. He has also won 125 caps and scored 45 goals for Germany, with whom he won the 2014 World Cup alongside Mesut Ozil, putting him 4th in Germany's all-time appearance charts and 6th in terms of goals. What's more, Muller is still going strong for both club and country at the age of 34, and he should get plenty of assists this season, with Harry Kane playing in front of him. It is a quite remarkable record all round, so whilst I couldn't justify putting Muller ahead of either of the 3 players up next, his spot in this 7 was never in doubt. Third, Kevin De Bruyne. The youngest player in this 7, Kevin De Bruyne is only 32 years old, and it's not unimaginable to me that if he can stay fit for another 3 or 4 years, he could go second or even first in this list. The most talented midfielder I think that the Premier League has ever seen, De Bruyne is the complete package. He can run, he can score all kinds of different goals, and, above all else of course, his vision, range of passing, and particularly his weight of pass, are absolutely breathtaking. Arguably, Lionel Messi is the only better passer of all in world football over the past decade, and in terms of deliveries from wide areas, De Bruyne is probably even better than him. Having made his name at Genk, De Bruyne struggled for game time in his first foray into elite-level football with Chelsea, but it didn't take him long to bounce back from that setback. In his only full season at Wolfsburg, De Bruyne scored 16 goals and made 28 assists in 51 games to claim the Bundesliga Player of the Year award. That marked De Bruyne's arrival as a world-class footballer, aged 23, and he has been at that level or higher throughout the 9 years since. De Bruyne has won the Manchester City Player of the Year award 4 times during 8 seasons at the club, which is fairly astonishing when one thinks of the level of competition and the injuries that De Bruyne has had during that time. The fact that he has only made 686 senior appearances to date perhaps prevents him from cracking the top 2, combined with the fact that both of the players up next, hard as it may be to believe, were even more freakishly talented than him. Second, Kaká. It makes me feel incredibly old to say this, but I am well aware that there will be people watching this video who aren't old enough to have seen Kaká at his best. Thankfully, there is plenty of footage for those people, and I can think of few better ways to waste an afternoon on YouTube, other than watching my videos, of course. Kaká was blessed with every attribute that a number 10 could ever want. He was brilliant on the ball, a box of tricks. He could glide past players with consummate ease, and he was lethal in the final third. Kaká, as was sometimes overlooked even when he was at his best, was also sensationally quick, making it nearly impossible to catch back up with him once he'd got past you, and making him one of the most potent players on the planet in transition and on the break. Kaká was the only member of AC Milan's 2007 Champions League winning team who was under the age of 28, and it was his speed, invention, and youthful zeal that turned a wily old bunch of superstars into an unstoppable cup team. Kaká deservedly won both the FIFA World Player of the Year award and the Ballon d'Or in 2007, but he was world-class throughout the entirety of his first 6 years at the San Siro, and indeed, for 3 years with Sao Paulo before that. Kaká struggled with injuries following his 2009 world record-breaking transfer to Real Madrid, and he was never quite the lightning-quick and routinely devastating force that he had been in Serie A, though he certainly still had his moments. That lack of longevity, Kaká was 32 when he left Europe, 33 when he began playing in Major League Soccer, and only actually has 60 more appearances to his name than De Bruyne, denies him of top spot, but not of his rightful place as one of the greatest attacking midfielders, and indeed, one of the greatest footballers of the modern era. 0. Honourable mentions. It was a brutal task trying to assemble this 7, and the list of candidates was longer than it has been for any other video in this series up to this point. The players who came closest to featuring were probably Deco, Wesley Sneijder, and Marco Reus, but honourable mentions go to the likes of Diego, Paulo Dybala, Yuri Djurkaev, Christian Eriksen, JJ Okocha, Rui Costa, Marek Hamšík, James Rodriguez, Johan Gurkuf, Juan Mata, Dimitri Payet, Philippe Coutinho, Isco, Bruno Fernandes, Rafael van der Vaart, Guti, and a special shout-out also to Mohamed Aboutrika, who never got the chance to see an elite-level league, but who was certainly a special player. Those are just some of the most notable honourable mentions, but now it is time for your top spot. First, Ronaldinho. I must admit, when I started planning this 7, much as I thought Ronaldinho had the best peak of any attacking midfielder post-2000, I didn't actually expect him to take top spot purely by virtue of the fact that, as we all know, he suffered rather a steep early drop-off. When you dig deep down into it though, it's hard to argue against Ronaldinho. His first 2 seasons with Grêmio do fall outside of our purview in 1998 and 1999, but in 2000, he scored 28 goals in 37 games for his boyhood club, and in 2001, he was snapped up by PSG. Ronaldinho starred alongside fellow free spirit JJ Okocha in the French capital, and a year after winning the 2002 World Cup, Barcelona managed to steal in ahead of Manchester United and Alex Ferguson to sign him. Ironically, Barca only signed Ronaldinho because they had missed out on signing David Beckham from Manchester United, who chose to sign for Real Madrid instead. Meanwhile, Manchester United themselves signed Cristiano Ronaldo that summer after missing out on Ronaldinho. Ronaldinho hit his peak in Catalonia, and between 2003 and 2007, he was the best player in the world. Utterly unplayable at times, Ronaldinho had a penchant for pulling off tricks in Champions League knockout ties that most players wouldn't even dare to attempt in training. His trademark smile, quick feet, and childish spirit made him an iconic figure. And in the 2005-06 season, for example, Ronaldinho scored 26 goals and made 24 assists in 45 appearances. That is a return of better than a goal contribution per game, on top of all the flicks, tricks, and routine humiliations. Ronaldinho spent that season playing on the left wing, and in truth, he could very easily have been considered for that 7 instead, which might have been a little bit more challenging to top. Even after leaving Barcelona, which some consider to be the end of Ronaldinho's career at the highest level, it has to be noted that he made 19 assists and scored 15 goals in 43 games for AC Milan in the 2009-10 season, before enjoying 2 inspired seasons with both Flamengo and Atlético Mineiro back in Brazil, winning the Brazilian Footballer of the Year award. All in all, Ronaldinho's longevity isn't nearly as bad as some people make out. It's just that his peak was so incredible. His ability was off the charts, and his peak, as I say, was the highest of anyone in this 7. With no freakishly consistent rivals who have enjoyed far greater consistency or longevity than him with similar levels of ability, that is enough for the Champions League, World Cup, and Ballon d'Or winner to take top spot. That is it for today's video, but thank you all very much as ever for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Hope that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and of course, goes without saying, make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for both this channel, HITC Sevens, and also my second channel, Alfie Potts Harmer, both of which should be on or about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might enjoy watching after this one. I will link other videos in this series. You know, why not? Also, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads via the username @HITC Sevens on all of those 3 platforms. I've never posted on Threads, but you can follow me there if you so wish. You never know, I might in the future. And all of those links, plus a whole lot more, should be down in the video description below. Cheers.